Have you ever wondered where commonly used phrases come from? Language, as an integral part of our lives, can be a fascinating realm to delve into. Our daily conversations are peppered with idioms and phrases, each one with its unique story and history. These phrases, so seamlessly woven into our language, have origins that often date back centuries, to times and places far removed from our modern world. From the high seas of maritime folklore, to the theaters of Elizabethan England, the roots of these expressions are as diverse as they are intriguing. They have withstood the test of time, evolving and adapting, yet retaining their core essence, much like the language they form a part of. So, buckle up, as we embark on an exciting linguistic journey traversing time and space to uncover the stories behind the words we use. In this video, we will count down the top 10 commonly used phrases and their surprising origins. Starting at number 10, we have "pull out all the stops." This phrase rings with a certain gusto, doesn't it? But have you ever wondered where it comes from? Its origins are deeply rooted in the world of music, specifically the grand and majestic pipe organ. Each stop on these intricate instruments controls the flow of air to a set of pipes, modulating the sound. When all the stops are pulled out, the organ can play at its maximum volume and range, truly a spectacle to behold. Translated into everyday language, "pull out all the stops" came to signify utilizing every resource at one's disposal, leaving no stone unturned to achieve a goal. Whether it's preparing for an important presentation, organizing a surprise party, or simply baking the perfect cake, you're pulling out all the stops. So next time you pull out all the stops, remember its musical origins. Moving on to number 9, we have "put a sock in it." This phrase, often used to tell someone to be quiet, has a rather literal origin. Picture this. It's the early 20th century and gramophones are all the rage. But oh no, that blasted thing is just too loud. So what do? You put a sock in it, of course. Yes, you heard it right. Back in the day, people would literally put a sock in their gramophones to muffle the sound, giving birth to this quirky phrase. So the next time you hear someone say, "put a sock in it," you can picture a frustrated music lover from the past, desperately trying to quieten down their gramophone. It's fascinating how time transforms the literal into the idiomatic, isn't it? So, "put a sock in it" was more literal than you thought. At number 8, we have "go bananas." This phrase, which means to go crazy or become extremely excited or agitated, has a rather amusing origin. It dates back to the 1960s, a time when the world was shifting and evolving in countless ways. It was during this time that people began to notice a certain enthusiasm exhibited by monkeys when presented with bananas. The sheer delight and excitement shown by these primates were quite a spectacle, and it wasn't long before humans started to use the term "go bananas" to describe a similar level of excitement or craziness. So if someone tells you that they are going bananas over something, it simply means that they are as excited or agitated as a monkey with a banana. So the next time you're feeling a little too excited or overwhelmed, just remember, you're not alone. Monkeys feel the same way about bananas. Who knew going bananas had such a fun origin? Coming in at number 7, we have "butter someone up." Now this is a phrase that we often use when we want to impress or flatter someone for our own benefit. But did you know that the origins of this phrase are rooted in ancient India? That's right, this phrase has traveled a long way to find its place in our modern vocabulary. In ancient India, it was a common practice to throw balls of clarified butter, also known as ghee, at statues of gods. This was done as a form of offering or to seek favor from the deities. The act of throwing butter was seen as an act of flattery towards these gods, a way of currying their favor, if you will. Over time, this practice transformed into the phrase, "butter someone up," which we use today to describe the act of flattering someone for our own gain. So, buttering someone up is actually an ancient practice. At number 6, we have "bite the bullet." This phrase, which today means to face a difficult or unpleasant situation with courage, has its roots in the battlefields of the British Empire. In the days before effective anesthetics, soldiers undergoing surgery would literally bite on a bullet to help them endure the pain. Imagine being in the midst of a battlefield, the deafening sound of cannons and gunfire all around you. You've been wounded, and the only option is a quick, brutal surgery without any anesthesia. To cope with the excruciating pain, you're given a lead bullet to bite on. This act of grim determination and resilience gave birth to the phrase we use today. The term first appeared in written form in Rudyard Kipling's The Light That Failed in 1891, cementing its place in the English language. So, biting the bullet is more than just facing a difficult situation. It's a testament to human courage in the face of adversity. Halfway through at number 5 we have sleep tight. This comforting phrase we often use to wish someone a good night's sleep has a history that's more literal than you might expect. It dates back to the era when sleeping arrangements were quite different than what we're accustomed to today. Beds used to be framed with ropes, and a good comfortable sleep required these ropes to be tightened. Yes, you heard it right. The ropes were interwoven across the frame and a mattress was placed on top. Over time, these ropes could become loose, leading to a saggy, uncomfortable bed. Therefore, people had to regularly tighten the ropes to ensure a good night's sleep. Hence, the phrase sleep tight came into being, essentially meaning may your bed be well tightened and comfortable. Time and technology have changed our beds, but this phrase has stuck around. Next time you say sleep tight, remember its old world charm. Moving on to number 4, we have rule of thumb. This phrase, now commonly used to refer to a broadly accurate guide or principle, carries a rather shocking origin story. It's believed to have stemmed from Old English law, a time when the law was less, shall we say, enlightened. The term rule of thumb was supposedly a legal provision that permitted a man to physically discipline his wife, but only with a stick no wider than his thumb. Yes, you heard it right. This antiquated and inhumane rule was, quite literally, a rule of thumb. Today, of course, such a rule would be unthinkable and entirely unacceptable. It's fascinating and a bit unsettling to think that this everyday phrase has such a grim history. It's a stark reminder of how much societal norms have evolved over the centuries. So, rule of thumb has a less than savory origin. Coming in at number 3, we have son of a gun. This colloquial phrase, often used in a playful or mildly derogatory sense, has an origin that's more literal than you might expect. The term son of a gun hails from the high seas, specifically the naval culture of the 18th and 19th centuries. You see, during these times it was not uncommon for women to be aboard naval ships. Sometimes these women would give birth during long voyages. And where did these births happen? You guessed it, right behind the ship's gun shield. Now, why behind the gun shield? Well, it was one of the few places on the ship that offered some semblance of privacy. So, children born under these circumstances came to be known as sons of a gun. Over time, the phrase began to be used more broadly, often referring to someone who's a bit of a rascal or a rogue. So, son of a gun has a more literal meaning than you'd think. At number 2, we have run amok. A phrase we often use to describe chaotic scenarios, be it children causing a ruckus or a project going off the rails. But did you know run amok has a rather exotic origin? This phrase traces its roots back to the Malay word amuk, which means to make a furious and desperate charge. In the Malay culture, running amok was a socially recognized phenomenon, often associated with men who, driven by despair or frustration, would run wildly into the streets, attacking anyone in their path. The English picked up the phrase in the early 18th century, and over time, its meaning evolved. Today, running amok is used to describe any situation that's out of control or disorderly. Who knew such a common phrase had such a dramatic backstory? Running amok, it seems, has a rather dramatic origin. Finally, at number 1 we have chow down. This phrase, synonymous with eating heartily, has its roots in the Mandarin language. The word chow in Mandarin translates to cook or fry. Chinese immigrants who arrived in America during the 19th century brought with them their language, culture, and of course their cuisine. As they set up restaurants and food stalls, the word chow slowly began to permeate into the American vernacular. Over time, chow evolved into chow, retaining its culinary connotations. The phrase chow down then emerged as a colloquial expression to mean to eat, especially with gusto or enthusiasm. It's a fascinating example of how languages blend and evolve over time, influenced by cultural exchange and immigration. Words travel across borders, get adopted and adapted, and these linguistic crossovers enrich our everyday speech. So, chow down is a perfect example of language borrowing. That concludes our countdown of the top 10 commonly used phrases and their origins. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? From the organ-filled halls of churches to the high seas of naval lore, these phrases have found their way into our everyday conversations, adding color and flair to our language. Remember how pull out all the stops hails from the world of pipe organs? Or how the quiet plea of put a sock in it can be traced back to the early gramophone users? The wild go bananas took inspiration from our primate cousins, while the sweet intent behind butter someone up has roots in ancient Indian customs. From the stoic bite the bullet to the snug sleep tight, the practical rule of thumb, the cheeky son of a gun, the chaotic run amok, And finally, the hearty chow down. Each phrase carries a piece of history within it. Next time you use these phrases, impress your friends with your newfound knowledge of their origins.